So far in the agency quest paper, we've drafted two paragraphs. A paragraph in which we looked at an idea about agency from a speaker at a graduation or commencement. In that case, we were looking for what does that speaker have to say about one specific idea related to agency, how it limits us, how it advances our humanity, how in some way this idea maybe does both. Those were kind of our options. Music video, same kind of focus, one specific idea about agency from the video, this time asking what is the video or the artist saying about what does this one thing do in terms of agency? Expand, limit, some mix of the two. Finally, in our third paragraph, the one we're doing for today's exercise, we're going to be looking at agency in our own lives. Instead of looking at a commencement speech or a music video, in this paragraph, you're going to look at something you've learned from a mentor or guiding person in your life, like a parent, teacher, grandparent, relative, friend, someone who's provided you some guidance and perspective about agency, or you're going to zoom in and look at one specific experience you've had that's taught you something about agency. Again, specificity is going to be key here. Just like in the commencement speech and music video paragraphs, we don't want to pick something broad like success or happiness. We want to pick out something specific like perseverance, taking risks, learning from failure, collaborating with others, community, hope, some specific word that you can really look at and unpack in meaningful ways. And as was the case in the previous two paragraphs, in this paragraph you're going to explain, apply, and evaluate. Let's break those steps down. But before we go on to looking at those steps and looking at some samples, let's preview where we're going next. After you draft this agency in your life paragraph, the last one you're going to do is a paragraph about Reina Grande and agency. And then you're going to have 4 paragraphs, each looking at agency from a different perspective. These 4 paragraphs can be about 4 entirely different ideas of agency. In fact, it's better if they are. If they duplicate each other in some way, that's okay too. But nobody should be worried about all of your paragraphs talking about the same thing. We do not need to do that. It's organized so that this paper works when there's a different idea for each paragraph. Okay, so again, our 3 goals are explain, apply, and evaluate. So let's look at our 2 options for this paper, for this paragraph, I'm sorry. When we work on this paragraph, we can either look at a lesson about agency we've learned from a family member or mentor, such as a teacher, supervisor, etc., or we can reflect on a personal experience we've had related to agency. In either case, we want to start off with a claim about a specific idea. So this paragraph, my example, is about a mentor who taught me about staying in touch with our inner spirit wherever we are. That was the idea that I was taught by a Jesuit priest who was president of Georgetown University and a friend of mine. So this paragraph would be the paragraph I would write if I chose to write about a lesson from a mentor. If I chose to write a paragraph about a personal experience, the one I would write would be about teaching and a critique of how deficit-based approaches to teaching limit human agency. So I wanted to show you this example because, one, it's a really specific idea, right? Deficit-based approaches to human agency. It's an interesting concept we're going to learn more about this semester, but also it's a critique. A lot of us are focused, and it's totally fine to do this, on things that advance our agency. But it's also okay to do a paragraph about something that limits your agency. So this is an example of a paragraph that's about limiting agency. So in this case, I had 2 choices. I can either write about a family member or mentor and a lesson they taught me, or I can write about a personal experience. You're not doing both. You're doing one or the other. So it's up to you to sort of pick which approach you want to take and work from there. And you really should pick whichever approach works better for you, whichever one you can think of an example that has a clear message about agency. Once you've chosen which paragraph you're going to do, it's the same structure. The blue section is going to be your explained sentences. And in this case, you're going to take details from what the mentor or family member said to you, or details from the specific experience you had, and you're going to tell a detailed story about how that story is an example of expanded or limited agency, or in some way was both. Then in the orange section, you're going to apply the idea you learned to an outside example. So for example, Tim Healy taught me I had to focus on my inner peace in the middle of chaos. The example I have to come up with has to be apart from what he talked to me about. And so I talked about the pandemic and our experience of the pandemic. Tim wasn't even alive when the pandemic occurred, so his advice couldn't have been about that. I'm taking his advice about the pandemic and I'm applying it somewhere else. Down here, same situation, and I did the same example. I used COVID and our current situation in COVID to explore the idea about how deficit-based learning limits human agency. So again, the orange is an example, an application of the idea about agency that you've told a story about in the blue to an outside example, something that wasn't being talked about in the original situation, wasn't part of the focus of the original situation. That's application. You could take this out to a famous public story. You could talk about a book, a movie, a news event, anything and that works for you, something you've observed in the schools, in the world, anything that works. I do want to suggest for the applied paragraphs, you do not use personal examples. And the reason I want to suggest for the applied paragraphs, you stay away from personal examples is because, the reason I want to suggest for all of these paragraphs, for the apply section, you stay away from personal examples is because you may want to use those in your evaluation section. Because remember, your evaluation section is your opinion. So in this paragraph that I wrote about Tim Healy's advice to me, my evaluate section starts with, in my view, from my perspective. And then I talk about my opinion about what Tim said, how it applies to my life. Same if you go the personal experience route. Again, you start with, in my opinion, and then you talk about your opinion and why you have that opinion, right? Where does this opinion come from? What have you experienced in life that brings you to it? This is a great place to think about positionality. Positionality, all the things that shape your life, use that positionality diagram to help you expand your evaluation paragraphs. Look at all the things that shape your life. Income, ethnicity, race, religion, work, geography, education, gender, etc. All of those things. And ask yourselves, which of those are bringing me to this point where this is what I think and why? All right. So once again, just to sum up, you have two options for this third paragraph. You can either write about a family member or mentor and what they said, or write about a personal experience. And as always, same structure, explain, apply, evaluate. Hope this helps. Feel free to reach out to me with a text, phone call, email, if you want some help sitting down and crafting, working on developing your ideas.